Hey, Pretty Girl Club. So, today I want to talk about my social experiment that I've been doing. By the way, if I sound out of breath, I literally just ran up to my apartment. I had a lot of fun this weekend because it is Juneteenth weekend. So, I hope you guys are all going out and having fun. I am going to be recording that video on eCane. I'm going to be recording that probably tonight or tomorrow, and then I'm going to upload it. But I've just been living the soft life or getting my exotical tax. But the reason that I talk about all this stuff, like social experiments or pretty privilege, enjoying your beauty, enjoying your life, I talk about this because what's the point of being beautiful on the inside and out, having all these amazing things to say, having such a beautiful spirit, if you don't go out and share that with the world? And I've noticed that a lot of people, they focus their value on romantic relationships only, but it doesn't have to just be in a romantic relationship. It could be you hanging out with your friends or your family. You can still experience living the soft life and having fun. So let me pull out my notes really quick. And by the way, I had started people watching maybe a while ago, like a few weeks ago. And I have been people watching Exoticals as well as unambiguous black women and men. So I'm watching MLS women, MLS men, unambiguous black women, and unambiguous black men. And as far as the places where I people watched, I have done people watching at the pool. So at the pool at my apartment, because I told you guys how I'm gonna start going out to the pool. I've been doing a lot of sunbathing. Oh, I need to talk about my tanning thing because this summer I'm actually not tanning, and I will probably do another episode about that and how I'm like able to go out at the pool every single day and not get a tan. Okay, so when I was at my apartment pool, I noticed that there was an MLS girl. She was what I would call quote unquote light skinned black. Okay, I'll just describe her. So she was very petite and thin. She had 4B or 4C hair. Her hair was very afro y and it was long and natural and like a brownish reddish color. So I don't know if that was her natural color. Actually, no, it was her natural color. And she was with an unambiguous dark skinned black man. I noticed a pattern so far. I've noticed that a lot of exoticals have been with either unambiguous black men or white men equally. And I've noticed that unambiguous black women, so if they are quote unquote brown skin, so kind of like a cocoa to chocolatey skin tone, I've noticed that they have tended to be with dark skinned unambiguous black men. And then if she was a dark skinned black woman that was very dark skinned, I noticed a pattern where they tended to be with white men. So this is just what I observed, by the way. So obviously I can't speak for everyone, but I do live in a pretty big city, and so I think that that counts for something. So as far as patterns I've noticed though, I've noticed that the types of women, the types of exoticals that were with unambiguous black men, they tended to be more Afrocentric in terms of their hairstyles. Oh, and by the way, out of all of the couples that I was kind of people watching, so I don't know if these people were married, boyfriend, girlfriend, or on dates, but out of all of the couples that I people watched over the past few weeks, only one woman was wearing a wig. So now I am kind of starting to question when unambiguous black women say that black men don't like natural hair. Because when I examined not just exoticals, but also unambiguous women who were in relationships with a black man or a white man, all of them had natural hair or some sort of natural hair extensions, whether that was braids or maybe some sort of kinky afro buns or something like that. So I only saw one unambiguous black girl. She was wearing a wig. This was like in the grocery store, and she was with this unambiguous black man. But other than that, all of the unambiguous black women that I saw in relationships, just in general, they wore their natural hair or they wore a natural Afrocentric hairstyle, whether their boyfriend was black or white. And one thing that I noticed though was that the black women who were with the white guys, they were the very dark skinned black women. So almost like this ebony skin tone. That's just a pattern that I happen to notice. I did see a couple of unambiguous couples where both couples were dark skinned, like the same shade. But I did notice, unfortunately, some of those men did kind of have like a wandering eye, it seemed like, because, okay, so this weekend I went to an outdoor concert. So you know how you go to like the park or something like that and they have like a jazz band playing. So I went out with some friends and we were basically walking around and they have like a concession stand and then they have different bands come up and play. So they play like the saxophone or they play like just whatever type of music. So that's what I was doing this weekend and that event had thousands of people at it. But I will say that generally speaking, a lot of the MLS women or quote unquote light skinned black phenotype, when I say this, what I mean is they had kind of a brighter skin tone with like type 4 hair. Oftentimes it was like 4B, 4C, so not 4A. It was usually like a 4B or 4C. Those types of exoticals tended to be with unambiguous black men, from what I noticed. And then I noticed that the exoticals who were with white men, one of them, she was like a mixed race woman. She had a phenotype kind of like Stacey Dash. So her hair was straightened and it was kind of shorter. She had that same skin tone as Stacey Dash. And she was very elegant and she was with the white guy. And then I saw this other dark skinned exotical. She very much had kind of like this Jasmine Tooks, kind of Ethiopian. She looked like Sinead Gade. I don't know her name. The girl who she's that one model that I always put in the featurism photos. She has the very keen features. She had that same phenotype. She was with a white guy. So as far as some of the patterns I've noticed, and if the sound changed, it's because I'm like holding my laptop really weird because I'm looking at my notes. But as far as the patterns I've noticed, something interesting is that any woman who was out in public with a man, so if she was with her boyfriend or whatever, whether she was unambiguous or an exotical, all of them had nice bodies, 100% of them. So I did not see any obese women with men who were like obese. The one girl that I saw that was the biggest, she was the girl who had the wig on, and she wasn't even obese. She was probably like what, a size 16 or something, maybe about 5'7", about a size 16. So that is a pattern that I've noticed so far. Generally speaking, all of the women across the board, regardless of skin tone or race, if they were on a date with a guy or something or with their boyfriend, they all tended to be slim or kind of like, average size body, kind of like a healthy body weight. So their bodies looked nice. And I noticed that all of the men that they were with, their bodies looked normal as well. So they weren't like super obese, like Notorious B.I.G. or something like that. I did not see any of those couples out and about. Another thing that I noticed when I went to the concert, as well as like the food festival that I went to recently, and just people watching in grocery stores and pools, one thing that I noticed is that generally speaking, there were about 70% women in public places versus men. So I've been kind of keeping note, like, okay, when I'm in, well, except for the grocery store had about even 50-50 men and women, single or in relationships, I guess. But when I was at like the concerts or the festivals or when I was just out and about, you know how they have the strip where you can like go to the different bars and stuff. I guess they don't call it the strip, but those types of places where you walk downtown, generally speaking, I saw more women than men. And so this actually aligns with my decentering men talking point that most guys who don't have girlfriends or they don't have a date to go on, they don't have any social lives outside of women. A lot of guys, especially the ones online, a lot of them are just sitting in their apartments playing video games all day. And so you don't ever have to feel weird or feel bad, like, oh, I must be missing out. No, trust me, it's the guys that are actually missing out for the most part because out of all of these fun events that I've been going to over the last month, out of all of this sunbathing I've been doing, out of all of my time at the pool, I have generally seen more women than men. And so when it comes to dating and stuff like that, I would say that if you are a woman who does not like dating apps, and let's say you want to talk to some guy or something like that out in a public place, or you want to get approached in a public place, it may be a little bit less likely just based on the patterns that I've seen because about 70% of the women at all of these major events, I mean, 70% of the people were women at these major events. Another pattern that I happened to notice when I was looking at the single men or just men who were at any of these events by themselves, I noticed that usually unambiguous black men, they would come with each other. So there would be like maybe two black guys there, two single black guys, or maybe like two gay black guys or something like that. And I've noticed that the men who came to all of these music festivals, food festivals, and stuff by themselves, they were non-black men. So if you are the type of girl who tends to date out, not on a dating app, I believe that based on the patterns I observed, you may be more likely to be approached by a man who is non-black, or you may be more likely to come across a man who's non-black, because when I was out, just out and about in the city, actually paying attention, I noticed, generally speaking, there were just more non-black guys out and about, even at some of the black events, because I specifically went out during Juneteenth as well, just to observe and see, well, and also to have fun and like eat food too. But I wanted to observe, like, okay, are there going to be a bunch of black guys there? Am I going to see more unambiguous couples? And even at the black events, there were still more non black men who were out just enjoying the music and stuff like that versus single unambiguous black men. And then I noticed that with the unambiguous men that I observed, the single guys, or they weren't with a woman, they tended to be high. A lot of them were like smoking. So that could have just been by chance because I was in a concert environment for one of the days. I went to a food thing for one of the days. I also went to, so you know how they have like these little thrift shops or like these flea markets or farmers markets. I went to a place like that. So there's a particular place in the city where it's not like a black place, but it's like a place where everyone goes. Even the black men that I saw there, they tended to just be with each other as opposed to just a black man going out on his own. So that was another interesting thing I've noticed. So if you date black men slash MLS men, mixed race men, light skinned men, whatever, exotical men, I feel like we have to come up with a different name for them besides exoticals. That's a very feminine name. But as far as unambiguous men or exotical men, I did not see as many of them just out and about by themselves. So as far as opportunities for you to like, I don't know, I guess get some exotical tax from an exotical man, I feel like it's probably less if you're out and about. And another thing that I wanted to examine was MLS couples, exotical couples, where there's an exotical man and an exotical woman. I only noticed a few. So I would say that that was not the majority. The majority of the couples I saw, whether the man was an exotical or the woman, usually there was just one exotical in the relationship. So maybe there was a mixed woman with a white man. Maybe she was a light skinned black woman with a dark skinned black man. Maybe there was a biracial man with like, oh, you know what? Now that I think of it, I did not see any biracial men with dark skinned black unambiguous women. I saw mixed race men with like non black women more than, well, I didn't see any with unambiguous women. So that's another misconception. I would just say that after examining thousands of people and dozens of couples, I guess I can't really make a generalization, but I did not actually see any unambiguous mono dark skinned black women with like biracial men or like light skinned black men or mixed race men. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So you know how they say, oh, well, we're the preference or the blueprint, or like guys like us better. Generally speaking, from what I observed over the past few weeks, the majority of the women who were on dates and stuff were actually exoticals, whether it was dark skin exoticals, light skin exoticals. But just generally speaking, I did not actually see a lot of unambiguous black women on dates. And when I did see them, most of the time they were with either a non-black man, which was interesting. So that kind of does align with some of the things that they say on YouTube where they're like, oh, you should divest or you should date a white man. I did see more unambiguous black women with white men. But like I said, though, the types of unambiguous women that I saw with a man in general, they all had pretty privilege, just across the board. Any woman that I saw out in public, whether it was at the pool, whether it was at a concert or a food festival or even the grocery store, they all had some form of pretty privilege. And when I say that, I'm talking about their bodies. Their bodies were all like nice. That was one thing I was actually surprised by because I was expecting to see a lot of, I don't know, overweight couples. I did not see any. So I thought that was interesting. So if you're overweight and you are trying to get your exotical tax in the dating market, you may want to consider getting in shape or, getting snatched. Because I noticed that everybody, no matter who they were and no matter who they dated, they all had an in shape body, or at least it wasn't noticeably obese, except for maybe the one girl who was a little bit thick, and she was the one that was wearing a wig, and she was with a big black guy. So he had like a belly. Another thing that I happened to notice when I was people watching was that the exoticals who were with unambiguous black men, the unambiguous black men they were with were more attractive. They were like above average black men. That was a pattern I noticed. So this is also making me believe that maybe some of the people who are against exoticals being with black men, maybe they're mad because they feel like you're taking the attractive unambiguous black men. Because, for example, when I was looking at some of the women that I saw, they were always with a dark skinned black man who was like buff. I noticed usually he was tall and buff. Usually he was like, he had muscles and he had nice clothes. Just generally speaking, the types of black men that I saw exoticals with. Usually the guy would have some nice clothes or like nice style, I guess. Or maybe even like locks. You know, the guys where some girls, they kind of have this thing for like men with locks. That was another interesting thing I noticed too, though. I saw a couple of unambiguous couples where both people had locks. So the guy had locks and the girl also had locks. So I thought that was interesting as well. So once again, this goes against their narrative where they say nobody likes our natural hair or black men don't like our natural hair. That's not true because every single unambiguous woman that I observed, actually almost every woman that I observed who was in a relationship besides the one black girl with the wig, none of them had on lace fronts. I just want to make that clear. So if you are trying to get your exotical tax in the dating market, you may want to consider not wearing a straight lace front. I noticed that none of the girls that I saw that were on dates, black, exotical, whatever, none of them had on lace front wigs, like with the baby hairs and all that. Nope, they all had maybe their natural afro or passion twists or those boho, I think they're called boho braids or butterfly locks, just something that kind of went with their phenotype. I did not see not one girl with glued down baby hairs, and that's a lot coming from where I live, because where I live there are lots of women who wear the baby hair styles and stuff, and so I thought that was another interesting thing as well. The majority of the women that I noticed that were on dates with men or just out and about kind of flirting with men, or they were in the grocery store with a man, I just assumed that they were automatically probably dating or something. None of them had on lace fronts. None of them had on the straight silky lace fronts. And so now I'm also starting to think, I'm starting to wonder if those straight silky lace fronts are a repellent to some of these guys in terms of dating, whether it was black or white, because I didn't see anybody except for the one bigger black guy, and he was with the bigger black girl with the lace front, but also her lace front, she didn't have the baby hairs. So that's another thing that you may want to consider, because that's a pattern that I noticed. I noticed none of the girls who were being taken out on dates or in these relationships, they did not have on lace fronts with baby hairs. So if you are going to wear a lace front, I would suggest maybe not wearing it with the baby hairs, or if you are trying to get taken out to nice events and stuff. Another thing I will say is I did notice more light-skinned black women with dark-skinned black men. So that was something that I used to not really believe when I heard it on YouTube, like, oh, there are a lot of light-skinned black women who date unambiguous dark-skinned black men. I never really believed that or took that seriously until I started people watching. And, that talking point, it could be correct because, yeah, I did notice a lot of light-skinned black girls or like mixed race girls with these black men. Usually the black men were, like I said, they were kind of the tall, buff black men. And then as far as what I saw unambiguous women with, if they were with a black man, he generally was, number one, darker than them. So that makes sense. Their talking point where they say a lot of black guys want somebody who is slightly lighter than them, even if she is dark skinned. That is a pattern I noticed. So I do think that for a lot of black men, they could definitely be colors. I'm not over here denying that. And another thing I noticed though was that the unambiguous women who were in relationships, they wore their natural hair or some sort of natural hairstyle. Another random thing that I noticed was whenever I saw an unambiguous girl in a relationship with a guy, whether he was black or white, she happened to not be as affectionate. So holding hands or doing something romantic versus whenever I was observing the mixed race women or like the East African phenotype women, I noticed that whenever I happened to observe them, they happened to be holding hands with their boyfriends. Or one of the girls I saw, she was a light-skinned black girl with a dark-skinned black guy. She was doing a picnic. So when I went to the park, that was another time that I was people watching. They were having a picnic. So I noticed just by observing the mannerisms of the women, the exotical women, they seemed to be more affectionate from what I observed. So I'm not going to make a generalization and say that we are more affectionate or something, or you know how they have the feminine stereotype. So I don't know if that's what they're talking about. But I thought that was very interesting. I was like, oh, wow, how come when I see, exoticals with the black men, usually they're kind of doing something. And I would say that it's not the man who's doing it, because you know how some people are like, oh, well, black men, they're going to treat you better because they pedestalize you. They're going to be more romantic. No, not from what I observed. From what I observed, the women were just naturally more affectionate. So, for example, there's this one girl that I can think of. She was a dark skinned exotical. She looked like the girl from Boy Meets World. She kind of had like this Ethiopian phenotype. So I saw her in the Trader Joe's, and she was with the white guy, and she was like holding his hand. She was leaning on his shoulder. She was kind of like kissing him, kind of being flirty, like how you would with your boyfriend. So I noticed more of this flirty behavior from exoticals with their boyfriends versus the unambiguous women with their boyfriends. But once again, all of the women that I observed in relationships, they all happen to be pretty. So that makes me feel like relationships or dating or being taken out on dates, I really do feel like pretty privilege. That's what kind of gets the person in the door. So for all those women complaining online, nobody likes me and that sucks, or nobody swipes on a dating app, or nobody shows interest in me, I would start to question, okay, well, maybe they feel like they don't have pretty privilege, or they don't have pretty privilege, or something like that. But yeah, I thought that was interesting, kind of noticing even the difference in flirting styles and mannerisms and interactions of exoticals with their men versus the unambiguous women with their boyfriends. Because, like I said, with the unambiguous women that I observed, they were all very pretty. Just when I was out and about and I saw maybe a black woman, like I saw this one black woman with this white man, and she was very deep chocolatey, like Grace Jones complexion. She was very pretty. She was very tall. She had her natural hair or maybe natural extensions in some sort of high puff, and she was wearing this beautiful like button down dress. So she looked very elegant. She was wearing heels, and she was just walking with her boyfriend. He was white, or her date or whatever. And yeah, they weren't holding hands or anything. But then when I observed this other woman that I had seen the day before, she was a mixed race woman with a white man. She was also very dressed up. She had one of those cute matching sets, like the sets from Shein where it's like a cute cardigan with a skirt, like a sweater set or something like that. She was wearing something like that, and she was holding hands with the guy. So that was a very interesting thing I just noticed. I don't know. It was almost as if the women did seem a bit more flirty, a bit more like seductive with their boyfriends, or romantic with their dates, or kind of like maybe touching the guy's ear. You know how like you can play in your boyfriend's hair, like if he's non-black or something, you can kind of play in his hair. I noticed more of those behaviors from the exoticals versus the unambiguous women. So again, everything I'm saying could have been by chance, but I thought that was interesting. That was interesting enough for me to put it in my notes. Another thing I examined about flirting styles was, so I went to hang out by the pool, and that's going to be probably one of my daily habits from now on. But so I went down by the pool, and there was this buff, unambiguous black guy there. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I wonder if some light skinned girls come down to the pool, or some mixed race women, or just anybody. I wonder what's going to happen. And so this guy, he had a child, by the way. So he was just there by himself with his daughter. I'm assuming that he lived in the apartment and that his daughter was there visiting him or something. So this one white girl comes down, and she also had a kid. And then her kid and his kid started playing, and the white girl, she was exhibiting the same behavior that I saw from Exoticals, where she was just talkative. She was very natural. She was kind of laughing or whatever, just having a normal conversation with him. And the conversation flowed more smoothly from what I observed versus whenever I was people watching an unambiguous couple, or just an unambiguous black woman with her boyfriend, regardless of his race. For the most part, I didn't notice the unambiguous woman being as talkative with the guy, or being as flirty with the guy, or as smiley. I guess that's part of what it is too. Smiling. I noticed when I was paying attention to the unambiguous women with their boyfriends, they did not smile as much at their boyfriends. And that was noticeable enough for me to remember it, because, examining probably hundreds of couples over the past few weeks, I thought that was kind of weird, I guess. So it's making me think, okay, is this maybe a cultural thing to where maybe if you're from an environment where it's toxic, you don't have a reason to smile, or maybe your mom didn't smile at you, or maybe it's just not a part of your background smiling as much. But I've noticed with the women who were mixed race, or they happen to just have a different phenotype and stuff, for whatever reason, when I was observing them, they appeared either more confident or more smiley or just more relaxed in general. And by the way, none of this information that I'm giving, it's not supposed to be like causing you to stereotype or causing you to think negatively of anyone. I am just collecting information and I'm just telling you my experience. All I'm doing is telling you what I saw. So do with this information what you will. Take whatever you want from it. Another thing that I noticed that all of the women had in common, unambiguous or ambiguous, they all dressed pretty. So they were all dressed nice, except for the one girl who happened to have on the wig as well. That was the girl in the grocery store. She was just wearing a t-shirt, but other than her, all of the other women that I saw, regardless of race, phenotype, skin tone, if they were with a guy out in public, they all dressed cute and they all had like nice bodies. And when I say nice body, I'm not saying like, oh, they all looked like supermodels, but they were not obese. So like I didn't notice any women on dates and stuff where it's like, oh my God, she's really big, or like, wow, her stomach's really hanging out. No, I didn't notice any of that. They all looked really cute, and the majority of them had natural looking hairstyles that went with their phenotype, regardless of their race, even the unambiguous women. So again, with the whole, they don't like natural hair, I didn't see not one, well, I only saw one who had a lace front on. None of the other women that I witnessed, black or ambiguous, none of them had on lace fronts. Or if they did, they were natural looking enough to where I couldn't tell. Another thing that I have here in my notes is that MLS women and exoticals were more in shape than the unambiguous women that I observed. And I'm not trying to say that to be mean, that's just what I observed. They were just more in shape. Their bodies were just slimmer and kind of more toned than the unambiguous women. Another thing that I noticed when I went out, and this is in my notes, I said that attractive people are out and about in general. So just anytime I went out, it seemed like everybody kind of like looked pretty or looked nice and put together, girls or guys. And so once again, the fact that I did not see a lot of people who were quote unquote ugly or like raggedy looking, this makes me think about the types of people online. It makes me think that the people who are only online or they never get offline, they're only on YouTube. This makes me think that those are the people who don't go in public, or they don't want to be seen in public, or they don't have a reason to go out in public because they're too ashamed. Oh, another thing that I mentioned, or I mean, another thing I forgot to mention was I saw more exoticals out and about, just in general. More exoticals versus unambiguous mono dark skinned black women. So I thought that was also interesting. So it did make me think, okay, do exoticals or MLS women, do they feel more attractive in general? And it makes them want to go out more? Because why is it that whenever I go out, no matter where I'm people watching, if I count like, okay, how many unambiguous people are in this store? How many MLS women are in the store? There were just more MLS women slash exoticals of all skin tones versus unambiguous women, like with the 4C hair and everything. So it also made me think, okay, are some of these unambiguous women who think all these guys are colorists, are some of them only online and they don't actually go out? Because when I went out specifically with the intentions to people watch, and I went to all different kinds of places, I went to free places, I went to places where there would be thousands of people for me to observe. So I'm thinking, okay, if there is somewhere that unambiguous women would be, it would be at these Juneteenth events or at, soul food festivals, African American style jazz festivals and concerts and stuff. So I was like, if there's anywhere where I would be able to people watch the best, it would specifically be at these black events, which is a part of why I made sure to incorporate African American events in my people watching. And still, there were more MLS women in general. So isn't that interesting? So let's say a guy came out and he wanted to talk to a woman that night. If there are more MLS women in the concert, there are more mixed race women or quote unquote light skinned women or dark skinned women with keen features or whatever in the concerts. And then they happen to ask those women out, is he truly a colorist or a texturist or a featurist? Or is that just what was out and putting herself out there? Another thing that I noticed with the older exoticals, like I'm talking maybe 60 plus, because I tried to examine all ages, I noticed that there were more older exoticals out and about by themselves versus unambiguous older women. So when I went to the jazz place, I knew that there would be people of all ages, mainly older people. There were mainly older people there when they had the jazz bands playing. But that was something else. So that's a good social climbing tip that can be learned from the Exoticals, because it seemed like they were just kind of better at putting themselves out there, just in general. I'm not even talking about dating, but just in life. But have you guys noticed any of these patterns? And what do you ladies think of this? Do you fit any of these patterns that I noticed just from going out of my way to do some people watching? What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.